Today I'm talking about typography and inclusive design. Sound is okay? Yes. I have to move there. Okay, perfect. Anyway. When I finished my studies in Vienna at the Grafische, I designed a typeface visualizing each and every Braille character and translating it to people who cannot read it with their hands. Let's pause for a moment. If a blind person would sit here, the whole speech would consist only of spoken words. For the blind listener, it would be of no relevance if the text would be set in Zapfdingbats or in Bodoni ornaments. The blind listener always has the feeling of missing the visual part. Maybe somebody's laughing and you don't know why. Maybe there's a hidden joke somewhere. So how does it feel to be blind? A blind woman once told me, being blind is like carnival each and every day. Why? Imagine you're on a crowded street, everybody's wearing masks, but you. Somebody's waving over there and he's like, hey, how are you? How's your boyfriend? You have no idea who is talking to you. Until the person is as close as half a meter, you maybe recognize the sound or the contour. A blind man once told me, I asked him, what is the worst part of being blind? And his answer was, I cannot walk somewhere spontaneously. I always have to organize myself. I do research before I go somewhere. Imagine you're trying to reach the museum and you're navigating with Google Maps. Google Maps tells you, you have reached the address. You're standing there and you have no idea where the entrance is. Okay, you're asking people around. Some of them pass by. Of course, they won't answer because they have no time. Somebody's answering and he's like, why are you asking me? You're standing in front of it. That's why people with low vision, especially if you do not recognize that they're blind, they're always confronted with misunderstandings. When we talk about blind people, we talk about two totally different worlds. It's a huge difference if you're blind or low vision. Imagine walking through a landscape at night. It's a huge difference if there's the moon or if it's total darkness. I asked the man, okay, everything in life has two sides, a good one and a bad one. So what's the good side about being blind? And his answer was, it was really quick, yes, yes, there is a good side. I concentrate more on the really beautiful things in life and I really enjoy them. I value them much more than before because I'm not so distracted. Our brain is so distracted each and every day. We filter all the advertising. And yeah, that's the good thing. So imagine yourself, you're on the streets, and there's no advertising that distracts you from calling your mom. So, welcome to the story about lucky dots. The Braille system, it's Braille. The Braille system, it consists of 6 dots and on a matrix, and some of them are erased and the others not, so that's how the characters are distinguished. So dot 1 is letter A, but 6 dots, it's only 64 possible combinations, so we don't have enough combinations for capitals. That's why we have to work with, how do we call it, Steuerzeichen in German? It's like control characters, thank you so much. So control character dot 1 is capital A, And then the number sign .1 is number 1. And in other languages, like the language differ from each other. In other languages, for example, in French, we have accented characters. So in German Braille, there were some spare characters, and they have abbreviations. So in Braille, the abbreviations for ST, like ST, EU, OI, SCH, sh, they're shortened. So the task was, oh, and there's only one size, because we have to read it with our fingertips. It's only one size. We can, like, tactile, there's only one size that can be read. Yeah, so I had to design a monospace font, only one size, extremely narrow leading, because the characters are quite big, so Braille books are really, like, huge. Thick books, so they have to spare space. And the letter SCH has the same space than the small I, for example. And these are the three main Brailleschrift systems in German. Basisschrift, so without the short sign. Vollschrift, and then there is Kurzschrift, which is like stenography, shorthand. Oh, and there's very many other codes, like for mathematics, there's a code for music, even for knitting. So far we spoke about printed Braille. In computers, Braille is different. It's 8-dot, so they added 2 more dots, because you cannot translate like all this digital text with Steuerzeichen. That's not possible. So .7, for example, tells me, okay, this is the capital C. The design process. The biggest issue was SCH, the sh for me. So I worked out, yeah, different variations, and the last one was it. And the difference of the weight of the letters. In this approach, I had like a huge X-height and very, very low ascenders and descenders, because I wanted to embrace the Braille code. This is how it looked, the first version. And it is printed on, and Braille dots always have been embossed. So if you have a printed line, then it goes like up and down. And the disadvantage also is that the book has to stand all the time, because the dots, they get less tactile because they flatten over a while. And then 2018, I discovered lacquer printing. This means you have a flat paper, and the Braille dot is like a transparent dot on the paper. It's super, super tactile. It's like, I mean, it's a great material. You can bind it. Yeah, it's very stable. And that was the starting point to continue working on this project. It was a cooperation with Schriftlabor, and yeah, to refine the forms. So X-height got lower because of the really, really small leading. And so we had a little more space for ascenders and descenders, and the separation of the sign. So it's really funny, like as a student, you're like, okay, I invent a ligature, whoa. But then for the reading process, no, it's better to separate SC and H or C and H from each other. This is how it looks. Vollschrift, Literaturbraille, it is the reading Braille for blind people, like the most common one. And the typical situation would be like a 100% blind child reading together with adults or friends. And another style is for Basisschrift. It's It has, it's a little bolder and no abbreviations. Because the feedback was that there is a lot of children that are called blind, but they have low vision, so they're trying to see. It's really, really hard to learn Braille. So if somebody has, let's say, 3% vision, he will be on a computer and typeface like this big just to read it with the eyes. So really starting to learn Braille is the moment when you're like blind, almost blind. That's why it is used. So why is Braille so important? Nowadays we have a lot of electronic devices that talk to us, which is really, really great. Blind people wouldn't want to miss it. It's a great help. But children and young adults, they do not have the feeling they need to learn Braille. What happens, it's a new Braille analphabetism amongst students, and which is really bad. There is scientific studies proving that when you listen to a text by audio description, you will not memorize it. You cannot study something without reading. So reading is very, very important, and making reading fun is really, really important for youngsters. Braille is crucial to blind. It is not only orthography. I mean, printed words are so much more than spoken words, of course, but it's not only orthography, it's their access to education and social participation. Okay, learning to read. So when does a regular child get in touch with the alphabet? When it opens its eyes. Letters are everywhere. And children really, really want to understand what's about it. They have a mysterious power. They open the door to like a lot of stories, to new worlds. And you can experience stories together. It's a crucial part for sighted children. For blind children, this is different, because they grow up and almost nobody can read their type. That is why printed Braille is so important. Because, of course, when they grow up, it is possible to read alone. But learning to read, you can only do it together. Yeah, the next thought was, okay, I can do dots, so what about lines? How is this to produce tactile illustrations with this technique? So I started developing tactile illustrations in cooperation with blind schools and blind test readers, and to expand the printing technique to its maximum. It was hard work, it was a lot of months. And I found out I had a test reader. It was an adult in TU, so technical university, so he was technician basically. And I gave him a picture of the sun, and I was like, okay, this is meant to be a sun, what do you think about it? And he was touching it, and he was like smiling, and he was like, oh, is that cute? And it was a moment for me. I was like, okay, it was a technical thinking, but blind people love tactile illustrations. They really they worship if somebody, makes the effort, making something visible for them, and it makes them happy. But there is a problem. For us, I mean, we can see, so it is absolutely normal that this is meant to be a 3D form. But if you put this on a flat paper, and you print it with tactile lines, this is not a cube for a blind person. This is a square, and there's some quirky, somehow 5 other lines. What the hell is that? So it's really hard for blind people. You cannot say, hey, I have a new book, and he's like, oh, it's a cat. It doesn't work like this. They have to find out, they have to think about it really, really hard. So why wouldn't we make everything in 3D? It's easy. They need to learn to read maps, for example, or to learn, like if they finish school, they need to learn geometry. So they need to think about it hard. And I had a blind woman. She was as a test reader, and there's a cat walking in a book. And I asked her, can you tell me, is this the right foot or the left foot? And she was like, okay, thinking and touching and thinking and touching, and in the end, it's the right one. And I was like, yes. And she was so proud, and she was like, wow, that is brain work for adults only. It was like, whew. So inclusive design is always a compromise. You have to reduce forms. You have to make it an optimum for people with low vision, and then there's a lot of different illness types of the eye. Some see a spot, some see it blurred, some have too much light, some have not light enough. It's always a compromise. There is not a perfectly legible font for everyone. It doesn't exist. Okay, and then I started to think about the first book. It's called Where's Luna? You can follow Tomcat Tim in his search for his girlfriend, Luna. And while Tim is looking for Luna, it is getting dark. So in the book, it's getting darker and darker. And he's getting to know a lot of people, animals. And it's a story about nocturnal animals and how they orientate themselves in the dark. So you have a lot of issues you can talk to with blind people, because they orientate themselves with a stick, like the hair of the cat, or there is klicksonar, it is called, so they are like, and they can orientate in a room, and it's hard work. It's not like just, and woo, everything's clear. They really it's a lot of training to orientate yourself with that, like the bat. Yeah, so each letter and each picture is tactile and visible. It's a fairy tale in rhymes because you can memorize it. And yeah, and pictures for people with low vision also is an issue. Like the contrast, the position. You cannot put only the head of an elephant, because what's that? It's like a ball and a stick. So you have to think a lot about the position, and also Braille Schriftsatz, like the position of the Braille letters on the page. You have to think a lot about it, how to make it clear, perfectly clear, because you cannot make centered Braille. It makes no sense, because you would have to search for the beginning of each line. And yeah, as I told you, the Braille dots, they perfectly meet the standards. I haven't ever changed anything in Braille, of course. So a blind person reads Braille as always. Then I founded Lucky Dots Publishing. It started with a crowdfunding campaign. And you can find me on the web at luckydots.net. And there was a cooperation with a design student, Tutku Jantash, and she asked me to do a book with her together, and she was the printed graphic designer and I was the tactile designer. And yeah, in case anybody of you would like to realize a project with my typeface, don't hesitate to get in touch. Anna@luckydots, that's me. Okay, thank you.